They refused him service, even though he was a black billionaire, with a reservation for the hotel's finest suite. That night, humiliated and dismissed, Jordan Ellis vowed to change everything. A year later, he returned, not as a guest, but as the hotel's new owner, determined not just to right a personal wrong, but to dismantle a legacy of racism and elitism that had defined the institution for decades. What happened next stunned even those who thought they'd seen it all. But let's start at the beginning. Jordan Ellis moved with the poised ease of a man accustomed to navigating worlds where he wasn't always welcome, but had forced them to open their gates nonetheless. At 42, he exuded a confidence sharpened by countless battles fought and won, each victory etched into the lines of his sharp jawline and the slight crease at the corner of his piercing dark eyes. His skin, smooth and deep brown, gleamed under the hotel's glittering chandeliers, a stark and striking contrast against the sea of white marble and polished brass. His tailored navy suit fit him like a second skin, cut by one of the world's finest designers, a quiet testament to his success rather than a loud proclamation. The subtle glint of a platinum watch peeked from under his cuff, and a slim gold tie clip gleamed at his chest. He carried no briefcase or unnecessary accessories. His presence alone spoke of wealth, power, and intention. Jordan didn't need to boast. His silence was louder than words. The grand lobby of the Westbrook Hotel stretched before him like a relic of opulence, adorned with ornate crown molding, a towering glass chandelier, and polished white floors that reflected the soft glow of sconces lining the walls. Every inch of the space screamed exclusivity, a place that served the city's elite and had little patience for anyone who didn't quite fit its rigid mold. Jordan had visited luxury hotels across the globe, but tonight wasn't about indulgence. He was here to finalize the details of a groundbreaking deal, a merger set to reshape entire industries and cement his legacy. He was prepared for this moment, or so he thought. As he strode toward the reception desk, the muted buzz of the lobby quieted. Conversations faltered as guests glanced at him, their gazes a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. His polished shoes tapped softly against the floor, a sound that echoed with purpose. A thin, pale concierge, whose face bore the practiced mask of false courtesy, stepped out from behind the counter to intercept him. His slicked-back hair gleamed unnaturally under the lights, and his narrow lips curled into a condescending smile. His entire posture suggested he'd made his assessment before a word had been spoken. "I believe you're in the wrong place, sir," the concierge said, his voice carrying the veneer of politeness while betraying the disdain lurking underneath. His gray eyes scanned Jordan as if searching for an explanation, some proof of how this man could have wandered into such an establishment. Jordan stopped, his eyes narrowing slightly, though his expression remained composed. "I have a reservation under Ellis," he stated, his tone calm, measured, and unwavering. He was used to moments like this, and knew better than to let his irritation show. The concierge's gaze lingered a beat too long, as if dissecting him, before glancing at the computer screen with exaggerated precision. After a few taps, he shook his head. "I'm sorry, but we don't have any records under that name. Perhaps you'd like to try another establishment?" His lips curled into a smirk that barely masked his satisfaction. A ripple of murmurs moved through the lobby. Eyes turned toward the exchange, some curious, others judgmental. Jordan felt their stares prickling against his skin, but he stood tall, meeting the concierge's gaze without flinching. "I booked the suite a week ago," Jordan said, his voice dropping just enough to convey authority. He reached into his inner pocket, producing a printed confirmation. The paper, a rare concession for him in a digital age, was crisp and irrefutable. "Here's my reservation. Check again." The concierge accepted the paper reluctantly, glancing at it briefly before shaking his head again. "There must be some mistake," he said dismissively. "Unfortunately, we have no availability tonight." Jordan's jaw tightened imperceptibly. He felt the sting of humiliation creep into his chest, but forced it down. "You're refusing me service," he said quietly, his voice a low rumble that carried more weight than any raised tone could. "I'm simply enforcing our policies," the concierge replied, his voice dripping with feigned regret. "I trust you understand." Jordan understood all too well. This wasn't about a policy. It was about him, who he was, and what he wasn't. The sting of indignation cut deeper than he anticipated. After a moment of silence, Jordan turned, his movements deliberate and composed, and walked toward the exit. The grandeur of the Westbrook lobby blurred in his periphery as his thoughts focused. By the time he slid into the back seat of his sleek black car, the sting had transformed into something sharper: resolve. The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Everything all right, sir?" Jordan's lips thinned into a line, his dark eyes fixed ahead. "It will be," he murmured, his voice steady and low. His gaze flicked back to the towering Westbrook facade, its gold-lettered sign gleaming arrogantly against the night. "I'll be back," he whispered, his words more a promise than a statement, and the car pulled smoothly into the Manhattan night. Jordan's penthouse office towered above the city like a modern-day fortress, with floor-to-ceiling windows, framing a breathtaking panorama of Manhattan's skyline. The lights of the bustling metropolis below sparkled like a sea of stars, casting a golden glow into the sleek, minimalist space. However, the beauty outside was lost on him tonight. His focus was elsewhere, sharp, precise, and unyielding. Seated across from him was Naomi Pierce, his trusted aide and chief strategist. In her early 30s, Naomi had an aura of effortless sophistication. Her tailored emerald green suit matched the sharpness of her intellect, and her short, stylishly cropped hair highlighted a face that could shift seamlessly from warm to intimidating in an instant. A tablet sat in front of her, the screen displaying projections and strategy notes, though her piercing gaze was fixed squarely on Jordan. "You want to buy the Westbrook?" she asked, raising one perfectly arched brow. Her tone wasn't incredulous, but there was a trace of curiosity, a challenge. Jordan, seated in his high-backed leather chair, leaned slightly forward. The city's glow reflected in his dark eyes, intensifying the fire that already burned there. "Not want, need," he said, his deep voice steady but laced with determination. "It's not about revenge. It's about transformation. No one should ever feel what I felt walking out of there." Naomi's lips curled into a smirk. She admired his clarity of purpose, though she knew the road ahead would be far from simple. "You realize they won't sell easily," she pointed out, crossing her legs and resting her elbow on the arm of her chair. "The Westbrooks owned by a family dynasty, and they pride themselves on their heritage." Her voice lingered on the word, tinged with disdain. Jordan didn't flinch. If anything, he seemed more resolute. He leaned closer, placing his hands flat on the sleek glass desk between them. "Then let's show them how fragile their heritage really is," he said, his tone calm but cutting. "I want every angle: financial leverage, market research, and public pressure." Naomi's smirk widened into a full grin, a gleam of excitement flashing in her eyes. This was what she lived for: the thrill of dismantling seemingly invincible institutions and replacing them with something better. "Consider it done," she replied, tapping a few notes into her tablet. "But I hope you're ready for a fight. Old money doesn't go down without a struggle." Jordan sat back, his gaze steady. "They'll fight," he agreed, "but they'll lose. Every dynasty falls when it refuses to adapt." For months, Jordan's team operated like a well-oiled machine, their work shrouded in secrecy. Naomi orchestrated every move with surgical precision, tapping into her vast network of connections. They began by digging into the Westbrooks' financials, uncovering a truth hidden beneath its polished facade. The hotel wasn't as invincible as it seemed. Decades of mismanagement, lavish spending, and outdated business practices had left it teetering on the brink of debt. Naomi's reports were as damning as they were detailed. The Westbrook clung to its reputation, but its earnings had been steadily declining for years. The family had been quietly funneling money into patchwork fixes, but it was clear they were running out of options. "They're one bad quarter away from disaster," Naomi remarked one evening, her eyes gleaming as she presented her findings. "The cracks are already there. All we have to do is widen them." Meanwhile, Jordan turned his focus outward, crafting a public image that would solidify his position as a pioneer in the hospitality industry. He poured millions into diversity initiatives, funding scholarships for underrepresented students in hospitality management and partnering with nonprofits to support equitable practices in luxury spaces. His efforts didn't go unnoticed. Media outlets celebrated his initiatives, portraying him as a visionary, determined to reshape the industry. As whispers of his interest in hotels spread, speculation ran wild. Analysts predicted he was preparing to launch a boutique chain. Journalists scrambled for exclusives, and rivals scrambled to decipher his next move. But Jordan played his cards close to his chest, ensuring that the Westbrook remained an unnamed target. Behind the scenes, Naomi leveraged every piece of information they had gathered to turn the screws tighter. Subtle campaigns sowed doubts among the Westbrooks' shareholders, while anonymous tips to industry insiders highlighted the hotel's precarious finances. It wasn't long before the board found themselves facing a growing storm of questions they couldn't answer. By the time Jordan was ready to strike, the Westbrook was no longer the unshakable institution it once appeared to be. The dynasty that had ruled it for generations was cornered, their heritage exposed as a crumbling facade. All that remained was the final blow. And Jordan Ellis, the man they had once dismissed, was more than ready to deliver it. The Westbrook Hotel's boardroom was a relic of its storied past. Mahogany-paneled walls, a massive oval table, and heavy velvet drapes that muted the city's hum. Seated at one end was Jordan Ellis, his tailored suit an understated declaration of power. Across from him sat the board of the Westbrook, a collection of aging elites whose polished exteriors betrayed their growing desperation. At their center was Mrs. Margaret Lancaster, the board's chairperson, whose icy glare was as legendary as the hotel itself. Jordan's presentation had been methodical and surgical, his proposal built on months of research and irrefutable data. He laid out the hotel's financial decline with precision, presenting solutions with the same calm authority that had built his empire. By the time he concluded, there was little room for negotiation. The numbers didn't lie, and neither did the palpable tension in the room. "Mr. Ellis," Mrs. Lancaster began, her voice sharp and aristocratic, "your offer may be adequate, but the Westbrook is more than a business. It is a symbol of tradition and exclusivity. Do you intend to turn this into a circus?" Jordan leaned forward, his gaze steady. "No," he replied, his voice low but firm. "I intend to turn it into a beacon." Mrs. Lancaster's nostrils flared, but she said nothing more. One by one, The board members exchanged resigned glances. They knew they had no choice. Moments later, pens scratched across paper, sealing the deal that would change the Westbrook forever. The news of the acquisition spread like wildfire. Headlines ranged from glowing praise to thinly veiled skepticism. Billionaire Jordan Ellis buys iconic Westbrook Hotel, and end of an era or beginning of a circus. Social media buzzed with debates, many celebrating the shakeup, while others lamented the perceived loss of tradition. Jordan, however, paid the noise little mind. His focus was already on the future. The transformation began immediately. Jordan's first act was a complete overhaul of the hotel's management. The old guard was quietly replaced with a diverse team of industry innovators, each selected for their expertise and vision. Naomi Pierce, now serving as the hotel's chief strategy officer, orchestrated the changes with her characteristic precision. Jordan also introduced inclusive hiring practices, ensuring that the staff reflected the city's vibrant diversity. Community outreach programs were implemented, offering opportunities to underrepresented groups in hospitality. The grand, exclusive space was opened to a broader audience, with local art installations, community events, and partnerships with small businesses that reflected the city's culture. Every corner of the Westbrook was reimagined. The gilded ballroom became a venue for both black-tie galas and cultural festivals. The menu at the fine dining restaurant was redesigned to celebrate global cuisines. The once intimidating concierge desk now greeted guests with warmth, reflecting the hotel's new ethos. Within months, the Westbrook's transformation became a symbol of progress. Critics softened, guests raved, and even skeptics admitted that the new Westbrook was thriving. What had once been a fortress of exclusion now stood as a shining example of what luxury could be: welcoming, innovative, and deeply human. And at its helm was Jordan Ellis, proving with every decision that this was never about revenge. It was about legacy. A year later, Jordan stood in the renovated lobby, now modern, yet warm, with art celebrating diversity adorning the walls. The same concierge who had dismissed him walked in, his expression one of disbelief and growing dread. Jordan, now in a casual blazer, greeted him with a smile. "Welcome to the new Westbrook," Jordan said, his voice calm but firm. "I trust you'll find our service exceptional." The concierge stammered, struggling for words, but Jordan had already moved on, shaking hands with guests and greeting the staff by name. The media buzzed around him, snapping pictures and capturing interviews. Jordan's vision had come to life. The Westbrook wasn't just a hotel anymore. It was a statement. And as he raised a glass to the evening crowd, he toasted not to his revenge, but to change. "To progress," he said, smiling. The room erupted in applause, and the Westbrook gleamed under its new legacy.